Oh gosh, I love Jim Jarmusch. That's pretty incredible. It changed my trajectory as a filmmaker. There's some cheesy stuff in this film, so you gotta be careful with it. It just opened up a window in my mind. I didn't know movies could operate that way. This is the closest to perfection you can get in terms of cinema. I think Paul Newman is the best. And the closest we have is Matthew McConaughey.
Welcome.
Thank you. Personally, I love DVDs, but I love Blu-ray. I just think it's an incredible format, you know, especially because you don't get any of the compression that you get with streaming or anything else. So I'm a fan of the format. But I also love the idea of physical media, such as a place like this. There's something about the way your brain works when you walk through a video store. It's not the same as, you know, going through a page and on a streaming service or something. It makes you value the media a little bit differently. It makes you value the movies more. And anything that makes the process of selecting a film and watching a film more valuable, I'm all for it. Well, I'm not a massive cinephile in general. I have the films that I like. And the films that I can refer to kind of with ease. But I was fortunate enough to serve on the jury of Cannes with Oscar, and we became friends. And I think his film, the English translation is A Hero. Man, it's a beautiful film. It's just one of those films that just kind of winds you up in knots. You know, even though it's not an action film or anything like that, it's extremely intense. I love the way he makes films. Yeah, so I first saw this film on television.
There's
a cable channel in the States called Bravo, which now it just shows like really bad reality TV shows. But back in the late 90s, they didn't really know what they were doing, and they were showing European films, they were showing foreign films. And one night I sat down, this would be, you know, I'm in high school at this point, and I watched Dreams by Akira Kurosawa. I didn't know who Kurosawa was. At this point, I was in my infancy in terms of film knowledge beyond everything I saw at the Cineplex growing up. You know, there's this incredible opening of this young boy whose mother tells him not to go outside. It looks like feudal Japan. She says, because it's raining and the sun is shining, and she says, foxes get married in this weather. And if they see you spying on them, they'll be very angry. But of course the boy goes out, and of course he sees a fox marriage ceremony. And when he comes back to the house, it's the most haunting thing. His mother's standing there, and she says, I can't let you in. A fox came here. He was very angry. He said you've been spying on him. And then she pulls out a dagger. And she's like, you have to kill yourself or go beg for their apology. And he's like, but where will I find them? She's like, in weather like this, they're rainbows. And the foxes live under the rainbows. And the last shot of this short story is here. And apparently these were literal dreams that Kurosawa had. And he just made them into a collection of dreams. It wasn't, I think, heralded when it came out. It wasn't something that was considered very successful. But for me, having been raised on this steady diet of, you know, American Hollywood studio cinema, to sit on my couch and watch this film, it just opened up a window in my mind. I didn't know movies could operate that way, you know? It's beautiful. And then, of course, you start to get educated and you realize, of course it is. It's Kurosawa. Well, I have to pick this up really quickly. So my editor, Julie Monroe, who's been working with me since Mud, so Mud, Midnight Special, Loving, and now the Bikeriders, she was an assistant editor on JFK. And she worked for Oliver Stone for years. And so whenever I'm getting bored in the editing room, she'll regale me with stories of Oliver Stone, who apparently was quite demanding, as you can imagine.
We had it in the store 2 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I bet he was interesting.
And George Clooney directed it, and he's a good director. He did a good job.
Ah, right. Okay. I'm in 4th grade, growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we have a single-screen dome theater. They since have torn it down, turned it into a parking lot, which is devastating to me because it's this theater I grew up in. In 4th grade, they re-released Lawrence of Arabia, a 70mm print. And so I walk into the theater that I've seen Indiana Jones at, the theater that I'm watching the Star Wars films at, and I watch this. I was about 9 years old. I sit down and the curtains open up because this film is in scope, and I really didn't know what was going on. It's not like I knew anything about the story or the actors or anything like that. What I felt was the impression of the scale of it. It was massive, and ever since then I've been chasing that. So when I get to college, you know, it's the late 90s, American independent cinema, for lack of a better term, movies kind of look like crap. You know, everything is totally organic and homespun, which is great. And you look at films like Slacker and Clerks, and you know, they have these tremendous hearts and these tremendous spirits. But I'm going to school with David Gordon Green, and we're talking about Lawrence of Arabia. We're talking about Terrence Malick. We're talking about, you know, at the time it would be The Thin Red Line had just come out. We wanted to make big cinema. Even though we didn't have any money, we didn't have any resources, we wanted to make things in scope. So from the very beginning, we've shot in 235. We shot in anamorphic. It's a lead I took from David Green, but it's because of Lawrence of Arabia. That's the reason.
So do you think we can discover it on a small screen?
Sure you can. Well, especially you should get it on Blu-ray. I don't know if you guys have it on Blu-ray, but get a TV as large as you can. You will not get to experience it the way I did. You got to go see it in a theater. That's the truth. The truth is, you know, this experience still can happen, though. I just had it last year for my birthday. I wanted to go see a movie, and the only thing on was Godzilla -1. But I saw it in an IMAX screen, and it's the first time in a really long time that I felt completely immersed by a film. It's the benefit of these new technologies and these new IMAX screens. Or Dolby has a screen that's pretty great. Your whole field of vision needs to be filled with it, you know? And the sound has to be good, obviously. All right, so this film, The Hustler.
You look beautiful, Fats. Just like a baby.
And we'll probably talk about others here, but there's a handful of films that I discovered in film school. So I went to a small art school called North Carolina School of the Arts. What was amazing about it is they had built 3 theaters with actual film projectors because of a guy named Ray Regis. Ray Regis, who was kind of a strange guy, but always very nice to me, he had worked at a nunnery, and the nuns would get films, and he was the projectionist that would show the nuns these films. And he was independently wealthy, and over time, he just bought all of these films that came through that he would screen for the nuns. So by the time he came to our college, he had one of the largest private film collections in the world. He was friends with Martin Scorsese. They would exchange hard-to-get prints. He had nitrate prints of Stagecoach. And he had a print of The Hustler, which is very hard to find. And so I get to see The Hustler projected on film in a theater. I get to see Badlands projected on film in a theater. And again, for a kid who had come out of the steady diet of American Hollywood cinema, to see these films projected in a theater, it confused me, to be honest. I didn't know films could operate this way. I didn't know they could actually do the things that these filmmakers had already done. It changed my trajectory as a filmmaker. I'll talk about The Hustler specifically. The structure of it is really tragic, but also it's such an odd structure. I mean, it's not at all about a hero, you know, winning a pool match. By the time he actually shows up at the end, and he actually plays pool against Jackie Gleason, and he wins, it doesn't matter to him anymore. It's fruitless. And it's not really a sports film, but it is a competition film. You could make a film about competition, about winning, and you could land in a place where winning doesn't matter anymore. That's pretty incredible. And that's these films from the 60s, which have Paul Newman in them. At the time, they felt like they were dealing with anti-heroes. I don't really know about that, but they just felt extremely human, and they felt like literature. And then I really responded to that, which immediately takes you to, I don't know this French title. We just call it HUD. Larry McMurtry, who wrote Lonesome Dove, one of the greatest, you know, Texas writers to ever live, arguably one of the greatest American writers to ever live. He wrote the story that inspired this film. And I actually can't remember the first time I saw it, but there is a scene in this film where they're required to kill 2 longhorn steers.
Lord, but I've chased them longhorns many a mile. I don't know if I can kill them.
It's off screen. You don't see it. And it is one of the most emotional things I've ever seen on film. It's just simply heartbreaking. And whenever I did encounter this film, I know that that scene just was imprinted on my mind. You know, anytime you make a movie, you got a lot of movies, you got a lot of people making movies, and it's very hard to walk out of a movie and feel emotionally connected to it. You cannot watch this film and not be emotionally connected to it. Apparently, Paul Newman was shocked when he would go to college dorm rooms and kids would have, you know, this picture up on their wall because he thought he was playing a villain. But because he's Paul Newman, he's incredibly likable. And when I was making Mud, I thought very much about, if I could cast Paul Newman, I would. So who is Paul Newman? And the closest we have is Matthew McConaughey. And I consider that the highest compliment I can give an actor because I think Paul Newman is the best. And I knew I needed a character in Mud that had done all of these unlikable things, but for some reason would be extremely magnetic and extremely likable. And that's Matthew McConaughey in Mud, and it's Paul Newman in HUD. So I grew up watching this. So I grew up with the idea of no man can eat 50 eggs in my house.
I can eat 50 eggs.
So it was funny because it always felt like kind of just this boring movie that my dad would have on all the time. Like it was literally, I don't know why they played it, like every weekend it seemed like. And it wasn't until college when I'm starting to watch The Hustler and I'm starting to watch HUD and I'm starting to revisit film kind of with a different mindset that you go back to Cool Hand Luke. And I have to say, out of these three films, Cool Hand Luke is the best.
Sorry, Luke. I'm just doing my job. You gotta appreciate that.
Nah. Calling it your job don't make it right, boss.
I can drop into Cool Hand Luke. There's something, I don't know, it kind of feels like the Bikeriders a little bit in that it's just cool. You just want to hang out with these people. And they're, you know, it's a chain gang. They're criminals. I don't know why I want to sit there and with this world with these people in prison. But you got Harry Dean Stanton, you know, playing songs on his guitar. And the whole thing just feels like a world that I want to live in for a while whenever I'm watching it.
I don't care if it rains or freezes as long as I got my plastic Jesus sitting.
I just think it's an incredible film. And again, look at the narrative structure of this film. Look at the stories that they're trying to tell. These are the kind of characters that I want to bring to life. The depth and the complexity. I mean, there's no greater thing. He's cutting the heads off of parking meters at the beginning of the film. Well, why would you do that? It's like it just felt like something to do, you know? This guy is actually a true rebel, you know? They talk about the fact that, you know, he went into the army and he achieved all these ranks, but he came out a buck private. It just says so much about the character. And he never comments on it at all, but we just know that he doesn't fit. He doesn't fit in society. And that's kind of what the Bikeriders is supposed to be about. Thanks for this. Yeah, so I grew up in a household where John Wayne movies just played on a loop. And The Cowboys was the first one that my dad consciously sat me down and had me watch, which was a calculated error on his part, because it is the only film, I believe, that John Wayne dies in, maybe in The Shootist. But for The Cowboys, he's killed by Bruce Dern, and I'll forever hate Bruce Dern because of this. And I think I've heard interviews with Bruce Dern. Apparently that followed him around, like people would curse him out on the street and stuff because he shot John Wayne. But it's an incredible film and there's something important about it. So John Wayne, he had a personality that became his acting style. I think the only Oscar that, I don't know if he was ever nominated for, but certainly ever won, was for playing Rooster Cogburn in True Grit.
Well, come to see a fat old man sometime. Yeah!
And I remember calling Matthew McConaughey's agent, and I said, do you know why John Wayne won an Oscar for True Grit? It is because it was a real character. It was a multi-dimensional, beautifully realized character where John Wayne could take everything that was John Wayne and filter it into this character.
Am I addressing Marshal Reuben J. Cogburn?
You're addressing him, Chan Lee, and General Sterling Price.
And I said, listen, I have written that role for Matthew McConaughey. We can take everything beautiful and wonderful about Matthew McConaughey and funnel it into a true blue character. A character that does not feel like Matthew McConaughey, but takes advantage of all of the benefits of him. And that's what I get from John Wayne. In The Bikeriders, my sixth film, my latest film, it's based on a book by Danny Lyon, who photographed a motorcycle club in Chicago in the 1960s. There's a photograph in the book of a scrapbook that apparently this guy named Johnny, who started the club, kept in his house. I can't imagine a motorcycle leader today, keeping a scrapbook, but this guy had one. And in the scrapbook, there is a TV guide with the picture from The Wild One. And the reason the guy put it in his scrapbook is because that's where he got the idea for the club, is he was watching The Wild One. And that is a true story that we plucked directly out of the book and put it in the film. What's cool about this is when you're working with an actor like Tom Hardy, he sees a scene like that, and it's not just an anecdote, it's not just something cute. He comes to me, and he's starting to work out his voice, and he says, you know, I think my character grew up watching James Cagney. I think he looked at Marlon Brando, and he covets what they are. He covets what they represent. In reality, this guy's just a truck driver. You know, he has a house in the suburbs with a wife and 2 kids, but he wants to be this guy. What makes that tragic is 10 years later, our character played by Tom Hardy wakes up and he is the leader of a bike gang.
You're the man in charge.
I'm John. We're the Vandals.
And he is not built for it. He's not suited for it. And it's a tragic end. There's The Wild One.
So maybe we can go in this direction?
Yep. Of course, you got Elvis. Now, it's important to note, you know, when I cast Austin Butler, this movie had not come out. The only thing that had come out was a trailer. But the trailer was pretty good. You could even look at the trailer and say, okay, this guy did some work.
Are you ready to fly?
I'm ready. Ready to fly.
What was funny was I cast Austin on the spot because I needed a young actor that was wholly charismatic, that you could believe Tom Hardy and Jodie Comer's characters would be drawn to for the entire film. And when I met Austin Butler in person, he carried all of that. He carried all of that magnetism.
Yeah, I guess.
But what's cool is I cast him in the movie, and then I went to go be on the jury at Cannes, and that's where Elvis premiered. So there's this really great place for jury members where they all get to have lunch together from all the different juries. And, you know, they invite famous people and cool people show up. Every lunch is kind of incredible. It's the best part about being on the jury. And you know, Austin walks in the night or the day after the premiere of Elvis, and everybody in the room's kind of excited. And he comes right up to me and gives me a big hug, and I felt like the coolest person at the Cannes Film Festival. And that's thanks to Baz Luhrmann. And of course, the film that we gave the Palme d'Or to that year was Triangle of Sadness.
Was it an easy decision?
You know, it was.
There it is. Doesn't look well.
Feeling seasick, sir?
It was a unanimous decision, I'll say that. Yeah, the film played beautifully. I do have a bone to pick with Ruben, and I know Ruben a little bit. We did a Sundance Lab together in Greece. But I read this article that after he won the Palme, he then was like, oh, this movie's so good, I'm gonna add back in like 10 or 15 minutes. And he shouldn't have done that. He should have left the movie the way it was when we voted on it. Man, how great is Past Lives?
이것도 전생이라면 우리의 다음 생에서는 벌써 서로에게 다른 인연인 게 아닐까?
I think this was one of my favorite films of that year. I love that film. So The Duel, it's the first time I actually saw Jodie Comer on screen because I'm a moron and I hadn't watched Killing Eve. But that's the way life is now. Like, we're all balkanized. You're either a fan of Killing Eve or you haven't seen it. Yeah. And you either know who Jodie Comer is and think she's amazing or you haven't seen it. And sadly, I was in the other camp.
You should never tell a psychopath they are a psychopath. It upsets them.
I'm very good friends with Adam Driver. He was in a film of mine called Midnight Special. And so when I was trying to cast Jodie Comer, I called Adam just to check. Because Adam is one of those actors that he does not suffer a fool. And I would trust his judgment in terms of, you know, not just the quality of the acting work, but the quality of the individual that's doing the acting. And he gave a glowing endorsement for Jodie Comer, which it's pretty much if Michael Shannon says they're a good actor and if Adam Driver says they're a good actor, then I'll listen to him, you know? But that film's pretty interesting. There's so many good ones. So this movie's hard to find.
So when you were a cheerleader, did you enjoy that at all?
No, I never was a cheerleader, never did that.
I don't know if you all actually really found it, but Michael Ritchie, who also made Fletch, which is one of my favorite films of all time, he made this made-for-TV movie for HBO. But what's interesting about it as it relates to the Bikeriders, so this film is about a woman in Texas who tried to hire her brother-in-law to kill a high school cheerleader that was competing against her daughter at cheerleading.
I want you to find me someone.
Oh, all right, yeah. Let me think about it.
See what you can do.
Hey, Yeah, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All
We'll
right.
make some calls.
Well,
all
sure,
right?
let me know.
And this woman was so crazy that the brother-in-law knew to tape all of the interactions that he had with her. And they used the transcripts of those tapes to actually build the dialogue for the film. I studied this in college by a professor named Gary Hawkins. He was teaching us how to write dialogue for film. And he said, watch the dialogue in this film because it's unlike anything you'll ever really see, because it's based on a real person talking. And Holly Hunter does an incredible job bringing it to life.
I don't want her showing back up here in 5 years. I want her gone.
You know, you said you want the bitch dead.
And I remember thinking, man, wouldn't it be amazing if I could find, you know, some real audio sources, some real dialogue sources to put into a film. And lo and behold, however many years later, I come across hours of recorded dialogue that Danny Lyon made in the 1960s. And it became at least 70% of the dialogue in the Bikeriders is taken verbatim from the recordings that he made in the 1960s. And the idea really came from this movie. One of my very good friends and mentors made George Washington.
Smile.
You know, we were at a small film school. No one had really been a success out of that film school until David made George Washington. Not only stylistically was it a film I really liked, as a business model, it was exactly what I wanted to do. I went to David and I said, how did you make this beautiful film? And he said, put all of your money into the camera department. You know, we only had about $40,000 and all of it went into the camera department. Everybody else had to work for free. And I owe my career to David Gordon Green. I mean, I got to talk about Jim Jarmusch and Mystery Train.
Jesus Christ, you know, what am I, fucking stupid?
I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. They didn't make a lot of movies there. They didn't make any movies there. And the closest big city that we had was Memphis. I actually got this from a video store in Little Rock, Arkansas in the late 90s. And I watched Mystery Train for the first time. And it made me realize, okay, these places that I'm seeing, you can actually put them in films. Like the only films that have been made in Memphis were like The Firm. You know, there's like that terrible scene of him doing backflips on the Beale Street. And you're just like, wait, I've been to Memphis. Memphis looks like shit. It doesn't look like this. It looks like this. And it was an honest portrayal of a place that I'd been. And that was the first time I encountered it in cinema. And I love Jim Jarmusch for that. Oh gosh, I love Jim Jarmusch for that. The Outsiders, if you look at The Outsiders, there's some cheesy stuff in this film.
God, you filthy greaser!
So you got to be careful with it. You know, some of the music is cheesy and there's some other things. But the first 3 minutes of this film, where Matt Dillon walks up and he walks with the other two characters through the town, the entire sequence is set to Gloria by them. I think it is probably 3 of the most perfect minutes in cinema. I remember growing up thinking, man, if I could just make a movie that felt like those 3 minutes, I'd be really happy. And that's what The Bikeriders is. Oh, the Bill Paxton movie, Frailty. Oh, yeah.
May God welcome you and keep you.
It's another great Matthew McConaughey experience. Now, I've never told this anecdote, and it has nothing to do with cinema. I got a call from Bill Paxton, who is a legend, and he wanted me to read a script that he was trying to get made. I don't know if he wanted me to direct it. I'm not really sure what he was asking. We didn't get a chance to talk. He left this beautiful phone message, though, where he said he was a fan of mud, and he said, I'll call you next week. I've got to go in for this medical procedure this weekend. And that's where he died. And I kept that voicemail message on my phone for as long as, and then stupid iPhone like just automatically deleted it. But I'm sad I never got to talk to Bill Paxton. This film, if you haven't seen it, it is one of McConaughey's best performances.
Listen, you mind if we just sit here a while? I don't much feel like talking anymore.
And it is creepy. It is a strange film that kind of plays with the nature of reality and faith and everything else. This film is important. People should talk about this film more than they do. Frailty, check it out, or whatever the title is in French. They cut me off. I talked too long. I'm sorry, guys. This film, No Country for Old Men.
What business is it of yours where I'm from? Friendo.
This is the only film that my cinematographer and I watch before every movie we make. I think this is the closest to perfection you can get in terms of cinema. And with that, I'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Konbini!